The laughter from the poolside was a sharp, discordant melody that cut through the warm California evening. For Leo, holding 2 plates of meticulously decorated birthday cake, the sound was a physical blow. He'd followed the noise, a sick feeling coiling in his gut, only to find the source. There, draped over a laughing, muscled stranger in the shimmering water, was his wife, Chloe. Her head was thrown back, her lips parted in a way he hadn't seen in years, but it was her eyes that shattered him. They were locked on the stranger with a raw, unguarded hunger. Then she kissed him, a deep, lingering kiss that was not for a birthday party audience, but a private, passionate claim. The world didn't slow down. It violently sped up, then screeched to a deafening halt. The plates slipped from his numb fingers, chocolate frosting and vanilla sponge exploding on the terracotta tiles like a grotesque parody of a celebration. 30 people fell silent. Chloe broke the kiss, saw him, and her face didn't morph into guilt or horror. It settled into something far colder, weary resignation. She swam to the edge, hoisted herself out, and water sluiced off the expensive bikini he'd bought her. She didn't reach for a towel. She reached for a manila envelope her friend held out, her movements crisp and rehearsed. She walked toward him, leaving wet footprints on the patio, and thrust the papers into his chest. "Happy birthday, Leo," she said, her voice devoid of any warmth. "I'm voiding this marriage. Sign them. My lawyer will be in touch." The final humiliation wasn't the affair. It was the served paperwork, still dry, prearranged, and waiting for his arrival at his own party. The void wasn't just in their marriage. It was the hollow, howling emptiness she left inside him as she turned her back and walked away, the crowd parting for her like she was a queen. The hollow howl inside Leo did not fade. It became his new heartbeat, a constant, throbbing reminder of the void Chloe had carved into him on the most public of stages. He did not cry. He did not rage. He signed the papers without a word, moved into a sterile, furnished apartment, and let the silence consume him. But within that silence, a new structure was being built, beam by cold, calculated beam. Revenge. He became an architect of ruin, and his blueprint was Chloe's entire life. The first pillar to collapse was her reputation. Leo had been the quiet, supportive husband, the tech nerd who funded her influencer lifestyle. He knew things. He had access to everything. Anonymously, he began to leak curated pieces of information. Incriminating financial records showing her undisclosed sponsorships and tax evasion were sent to the IRS and her most pious followers. Old DMs, carefully doctored to show her mocking her closest friends and loyal fans, found their way into the right group chats. He watched, a ghost in the machine, as her perfect online world began to crack. Sponsors dropped her. Her follower count plummeted amid the scandal. The comments on her last post, a vapid photo of her by the now infamous pool, were a torrent of digital venom. He learned everything about her lover, Mark. A would-be actor and professional freelancer, his charm was his only currency. Leo systematically bankrupted that charm. He posed as a powerful casting director, offering Mark a life-changing role, only to have him fly to a non-existent audition in Prague, stranding him and maxing out his credit cards. He then anonymously sent screenshots of Mark's desperate, flirtatious texts to other women to Chloe's phone. He didn't know if she believed them, but the seed of doubt was planted. His pursuit was meticulous, all-consuming. It ate away at the man he used to be. His own software startup, once his passion, became a shell, its resources subtly diverted to fund his vendetta. His friends, worried about his hollowed-out eyes and grim silence, slowly drifted away. He was a man possessed, driven by a cold fury that left no room for anything else. He would sit in the dark of his apartment, illuminated only by the glow of 3 monitors, watching the digital fallout of his schemes. Each notification of a canceled contract for Chloe, each desperate post from Mark, was a shot of adrenaline. But the high was fleeting, instantly replaced by the gnawing void that demanded more. There was no kindness in his heart, no thought of forgiveness. He saw a photo of Chloe, taken by a paparazzo he'd subtly tipped off. She was leaving a cafe, her face drawn and pale without its usual layer of makeup, her eyes frightened. A sliver of something, pity, perhaps, tried to break through the ice. He instantly quashed it. This is justice, he told himself, his fingers clenching on the mouse. This is what she deserves. He was not tearing her down out of hatred. He was administering a dose of reality. He was the instrument of her deserved downfall. The revenge was not for his broken heart. It was for the calculated, humiliating execution of their marriage. He would not stop until the woman who had voided him was, herself, utterly void. A year to the day after his birthday, Leo's blueprint was complete. Chloe was financially crippled, socially pariahized, and alone. Mark had fled back to his home state, his reputation in tatters. The final act was not digital. It was physical. He knew she'd be there, his house. The bank was foreclosing on it tomorrow, a fact he'd ensured she discovered at the last possible moment. He stood outside, watching through the window as she packed the last of her things into cardboard boxes, the grand, empty house echoing her every move. He let himself in. The sound of the door echoed like a gunshot in the barren space. She spun around, her eyes wide with a fear that was now her default state. She looked 10 years older. Leo. Her voice was a whisper. I came to see you off, he said, his tone flat, devoid of triumph. He gestured to the boxes. Is this all that's left of the life I gave you? A flicker of the old Chloe emerged, defensive and sharp. You did this. All of this. He said, taking a slow step forward, merely opened the doors. You walked through them. You voided the marriage, Chloe. I just made sure the world saw the void you really are. He detailed it all. The financial leaks, the manipulated DMs, the setup of her lover. He laid out his entire year-long campaign with the cold precision of a surgeon listing a procedure. He watched as the last vestiges of her defiance crumbled into utter devastation. She sank onto a box, her head in her hands. Why? She sobbed, the sound raw and broken. Why would you be so cruel? The question hung in the dusty air. Cruelty. He had called it justice for so long. But seeing her here, broken and defeated on a cardboard box in a hollow house, it didn't feel like justice. It felt like nothing. The void inside him hadn't been filled by her ruin. It had grown, fed by his own actions. The revenge he had carried so carefully, that had shaped his every waking moment, was ash in his mouth. He had won. He had orchestrated the perfect revenge. And it meant absolutely nothing. The pain was still there. The humiliation was still there. He had simply mirrored it back at her, and in doing so, had multiplied it, polluted himself with it. He thought it would bring closure, but it had only built a higher wall around his own prison. He looked at her, this woman he had once loved, now a shattered monument to his vengeance. The climactic confrontation he'd fantasized about, the screaming, the accusations, dissolved into a profound, empty silence. There was nothing left to say. There was no victory to claim. He turned and walked out of the house. He didn't look back. He got into his car and drove, not to his apartment, but straight through the night, away from the city, toward the desert. As the sun rose, painting the sky in colors of fire and ash, he pulled over and finally wept. Not for his marriage, not for Chloe, but for the man he had sacrificed on the altar of revenge. He had wanted her to face a void, and in the end, he was the one left staring into its depths, alone. The cost of revenge was not measured in what you take from the other person, but in what you annihilate within yourself. Moral of the story: revenge is a fire that burns the hand of the one who carries it long before it ever reaches its target.